Hi there, this is our first embroidery video. Let's get started by picking up the thread. If your work requires you to just use 2 strands, so 2 strands, let me just show you how to pick up. You don't need to take out 2, alright? And you don't go plying one like this. So what you can do is just pull it out like this. Don't worry about this lot over here. Okay, so we just pull it out. Okay, and they'll all be good. See? Okay. This would make 2 strands. Tie a knot. So let's get started on the 7 different basic stitches that I'll be doing with you today. First one would be the running stitch, then the back stitch, straight stitch, stamp stitch, chain stitch, detached stitch, which is also called the daisy stitch, as well as the French knot. Running stitch is really easy. I believe at some point of your time, when you need to mend some of your clothing, you probably have done such a stitch before. Running stitch is basically a stitch that has a gap in between. The gap varies. It can be very wide gap. It can be also very small gap. So these are running stitch. There is a gap in between. Okay. So this is an example of a running stitch. Right, so you can have very big running stitches like this. Okay, and the distance really doesn't matter. It depends on your project or the design that you're doing. You can have bigger ones, okay, with really small gaps. Like this. So this is an example of a running stitch. Have a look. Now next, back stitch. Similar with running stitch, just that there is no gaps in between. Okay, you can do from left to right or right to left. So we'll have one stitch that moves forward first. Okay, so we have one stitch that's actually forward stitching, and the rest of the stitch will be from back to the front. Alright, you'll be a distance away from where you ended. Then go back into the same hole. Go back into the same hole where you left off and stitch it back. So this is a back stitch. Okay, likewise, come back up a distance away, go into this same hole. See, it's the same hole. Let's go back in. So this is a back stitch. Now a straight stitch. Just go anywhere from point to point. Depends on what design you have. You can do this. You can have a star shape, for example. It can be from top to bottom, or from bottom to top. So this is an example of a straight stitch. Alright. So straight stitch basically is just one stitch from one end to another end. Now stamp stitch is a chain of stitches, alright, where the very first stitch would be longer than the rest of the stitches that you plan to stitch. Okay, so leave a loop here. Alright, leave a loop here and go right somewhere in between these two. Okay, and then come back somewhere in between these two. Say here. Am I right in between? No, thereabout. Okay, then we're just going to pull up. Now, the following stitches can be shorter. Okay, look. So, say this would be your normal stitch length, here to here. Alright, okay, so we're going to go in there. Sorry, so go in there. Alright. Leave this loop and repeat the same method that you did earlier on. Go back to that hole and pull it out. So this is a stem stitch. Okay, let's do a few more. So over here, alright, let's go in. The loop. Okay, leave this loop here. Go back up to that same hole. See? Go back up to the same hole. Alright, keep going. Let's do two more. Leave that loop there and up here to where the same thread was. Okay, now let's do one more. Okay, leave this loop. Let's come back up to the same hole here. Alright, and let's pull this. So this is how a stem stitch looks like. Chain stitch. Okay, let's bring our needle to the front of the cloth. Right, go back down to the same hole where you came up from. See, go back up. Go back into the same hole. You leave a loop here. Alright, you leave a loop here. And from the back of the cloth, move to the next stitch. See? Move your needle to the next stitch. Okay, and go through the hole. Do not pull too tight because a chain stitch, we're supposed to see the chain. Now next, let's put our needle back into the same hole and repeat the same process. See, go through to the same hole. Okay, and to the next stitch, through the loop, pull this up. Again, don't pull too tight. Now you see there are two chains. Right, go back to the same hole. So let's do one more. To your last one, then you would exit one hole after the last stitch. Okay, so this is a chain stitch. Now we will do the detached stitch, which is also called the daisy stitch. We're going to bring our needle to the front of the cloth. Okay, back to the same hole. Right, at the same time, let's pick up some part of the cloth. Oops. So we're going into the same hole, and at the same time pick up a bit of the cloth. Okay, and this thread to go underneath. Now pull this up, but not too tight, so that you can see a bit of loop over here. We usually use this for petals, okay, daisy petals. And in the very next hole after the loop, all right, just bring our needle to the back of the cloth, and here you go. Let's do another. Let's bring this up. Okay, back to the same hole. Let's pick up some, let's do a wider one. Okay, make sure that the thread is underneath the needle. Not too tight. Not too tight. Okay, we just want to see a small little loop in between. If ever, by accident, everything is too tight, okay, you can pull it a bit. See, this is one petal. And for the next petal, we can do the same. Back into the same hole. Okay, come up after a small distance. Put this thread underneath. Again, not too hard. Not too hard. Not too tight. And go one hole after that stitch. So you have 2 loops here. So this is a detached stitch. Over here it can look like a little half a flower. Alright. This is a French knot. You can make small French knots or larger French knots. Okay, let me just show you one small French knot. Let's bring the needle to the front. Alright, coil the needle with the thread 2 rounds. The bigger the knot, the more the rounds you have to go coil around. Okay, so let's do this again. So coil 2 times, 1, 2. Holding it on the other hand firmly, bring this needle back to the same hole. Okay, to the same hole and go back in. Alright, do not hold too tightly, otherwise you have problem going through the cloth. Now this is a French knot. Okay, you can coil around 3 times, 4 times. Let's see how it looks like if we coil around 3 times. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, hold it on the other hand. Go back into the same hole. Okay, hold the thread firmly but not too tightly. Make sure that these threads are touching the cloth, otherwise you have a very loose knot. Okay, so let's go. So this is 3 rounds. See, it's just slightly larger. Let's see if we were to do one that is probably 5 rounds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, go back down to the same hole. Hold this. Let's push it down. See? That is a bigger one. So yeah, these are the 7 basic stitches that we have done. Hope you enjoyed the video today. We have another 8 basic stitches coming up in the next video. See you again soon.